All right, Deshaun Watson spoke. We thought he was going to speak yesterday. He speaks today, and he finally showed some love to the city of Houston. Showed some love to the McNairs. Showed some love to the city as a whole, the franchise. Couple of former teammates. I think he might have been talking about Jonathan Owens because he was talking about practice squad and all that. But Deshaun Watson showed some love. He went up there and he stuck to football, which I can understand where some people might have wanted to hear a little bit more. But I think that was actually a smart strategy by Deshaun Watson. This was the first time that I think since he has spoken publicly where he handled this perfect. He just stuck to the ball. And in this situation, that's all he should do. And he stuck to the script. And I thought it was an A press conference by Deshaun. I think the effort to portray himself as a servant leader and all that other stuff, I think you should probably punt on that for the time being. I don't I don't think that given everything that's happened with Deshaun Watson, that being, the servant leader and all that type of stuff, I don't think that brand is there. And honestly, it might be a good adjustment by Deshaun Watson. Who knows if it's permanent? But for today, would I have liked to have heard a little bit more? Sure. But I understand what his strategy was, and I understand why he did what he did. So I can appreciate what Deshaun did. And I think the Cleveland Browns, the PR staff, for the first time since they brought in Deshaun Watson, they got to be feeling pretty good as well. It's the first time that he's gone up there and spoken, and it hasn't just been a total bleep show. I think you can cuss within the first 2 minutes. So wasn't a bleep show. So props to Deshaun for handling that the way that he did. I want to talk about Deshaun, and we talked about this a little bit on the show In the Loop, Monday through Friday, 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 610. Is Deshaun Watson going to be the same caliber player as he was before? Now, we assume yes, and we assume that Deshaun Watson, or some do, maybe some don't, but we assume he's going to be a good quarterback in the NFL. It might not happen this year, and you might have to wait till next year when he has a complete season under his belt to really see if that's going to happen. But we assume, I'll say I assume, I won't speak for you because you have a free voice. And by the way, at Landry Locker on Twitter, at Landry Locker on Instagram, you can post in the comments. I always read those. But I assume that Deshaun's going to be a good quarterback, and the Browns are going to probably next year be able to reap the benefits. Corey brings up, think this year he's going to be a little bit rusty. I agree with you. So I don't want to judge him too much this year, but I do also want to mention, I think now I predicted bad things for the Broncos. I said, I think I picked them last in the division, but I picked the Raiders first. So take it with a grain of salt. But I think many people assume that when Denver got Russell Wilson, they were going to be a playoff contender, and Russell Wilson was going to be at least a really good quarterback. Maybe not one of the best, but a really good quarterback. If you look at the stats, Russell Wilson actually has been as bad as Davis Mills, to the point where there are people who believe Russell Wilson should be benched. And Denver gave up a ton for Russell Wilson, and he's kind of fallen off. Maybe he turns it around next year. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe this is what Russell Wilson's going to be, and we're going to look back at that Denver trade and say that was one of the worst trades that we've ever seen. My question is, what would it take for Deshaun Watson to fall off like that? What are the obstacles in the way for Deshaun Watson? I think there are a couple, and I wouldn't bet on these, but I do think these are obstacles that he's going to have to overcome that do matter. First one is obviously the rust. But I'm not really going to judge him this year and say that that's like an indictment on the trade, no matter what he does. So the rust is something he's going to have to overcome in the short term, but eventually I think he overcomes that. So that's a short-term thing. But long-term, there are two things that I think matter when it comes to Deshaun Watson being what he was before the Browns were willing to trade 3 first-round picks and more and give him $250 million guaranteed. The first one is the mental side of things. Deshaun Watson, his entire life, probably from the time he was in Pee Wee, has not only not had to deal with any scrutiny, he's been the most respected, highly regarded, big man on campus, servant leader, perfect model citizen his entire career. He's gotten all kinds of love. All kinds of love. And while he's been in hostile environments, there's a big difference between going to Florida State or going to South Carolina and getting booed because you're the Clemson quarterback and going to a stadium and being booed because people think you're a slime ball. Regardless of whether you are or aren't, people think you're a slime ball. You go look in your social media comments. Just look at what social media was like when Deshaun tore his ACL his rookie year. It was just, you would have thought someone died. Now, he goes in his mentions, if he does, there's Bill Cosby photos. There's Bill Cosby photoshops. There's R. Kelly photoshops. There's people making like jerseys ridiculing Deshaun Watson. So he's going to have to deal with that. And it's something that he's never dealt with. Now, some people would say, well, you know, athletes are used to that type of thing. And athletes are used to it. But when you are Deshaun Watson and you've made a concerted effort to have a certain type of image, you wrote a book that was basically a self-help book talking about, you know, being a servant leader. You recorded yourself. I'm not saying this is bad, but you recorded yourself giving your game check to the cafeteria workers. So you've tried to put out this type of image, and now all of a sudden the image that you have is a complete opposite. The amount of love that you once had is a complete opposite, and it's got to feel a little bit weird, right? I mean, it's got to feel strange. I don't know how big of a deal that is. I don't know if that has anything to do with what happens on the field, but it's at least different, especially given that there was an effort to be, you know, more than a ball player, this larger than life figure. So I do think that is something that is going to be at least different for Deshaun Watson, and it's not going to go away. Right or wrong, it's not going to go away. We had someone yesterday, I think it was a Browns fan, appreciate you for coming through, and he said winning will cure all things. Maybe in Cleveland, but not anywhere else. The more you win, the more you're going to hear. You know, this isn't Michael. I keep hearing like the Michael Vick comparison. Michael Vick went to jail. He came out. There was clear, tangible like remorse. And Michael Vick was on, let's be honest, Vick was a really good player, but by the time he came back, I know he had the good run with Philadelphia. It was a different time. It was a different time. It was a different type of media. Like you hear the Ben Roethlisberger comparisons. It was a lot different. I think if the Ben Roethlisberger stuff happened 2 years ago, I don't know that Big Ben makes it out. I don't know that Big Ben makes it out. That was pre-Twitter. That was pre-intense social media. I don't know that Big Ben makes it out. I don't know that Mike Vick makes it out. Quite honestly, in this day and age, there's a big difference between, you know, the last 10 years and whatever. So it is something that to at least wonder, like, how is it going to affect Deshaun Watson? I mean, what is that like? I mean, he's going to have family at the game on Sunday, and this is going to be the first. They're going to hear fans yelling, "You sick bleep." There's going to be signs. They're going to have to walk around and hear all that stuff. So it's at least going to be different, and that's one of the hurdles that Deshaun's going to have to overcome in order to get back to where he was, because it's going to be unfamiliar territory. And I don't know how you get used to it. I'm not sure. Maybe you just stay off social media. I don't know. I mean, his own attorney, Rusty Hardin, said he lived on Instagram. That's one thing. The other thing, and this is something I relate to, maybe a little bit too much, but it's something that was brought up to me by Ken Carman and Anthony Lima in Cleveland. Cold weather. I know some of you might roll your eyes, but it's a thing. Some people hate cold weather. I hate cold weather. Peyton Manning, early in his career, they were talking about how he wasn't good in cold weather. Troy Aikman, the Cowboys, back in the 90s, the talk was avoid Lambeau Field. There was always graphics of, what this person's record was in cold weather. Deshaun Watson has played his football in Georgia, South Carolina, and Texas. I mean, look at his division games. Indianapolis in a dome. Tennessee, not too cold there. And Jacksonville, doesn't get cold there. And dome here, or retractable roof, whatever you want to call it. So I do think the cold weather, you look at, going to Pittsburgh, going to Baltimore, going to Cincinnati, Cleveland, what it's like there. The cold weather will be interesting too. Now, they do have a team around him to where he can play a certain style, and, maybe he doesn't have to, perform as well statistically as he once did, but I would keep an eye on the weather and the mental side of things, as far as what to keep an eye on when it comes to Deshaun Watson. Who knows? I think the mental thing does matter. I definitely think it does matter. But today was a really good start for him, because I think he kind of minimized the smoke. Eventually, he's probably going to have to speak, but does he really need to? Like, what do people want to hear from him? I don't know, but I thought it was good that he showed love to Houston, because I thought it was a big mistake not to in the first place. And we'll see what happens with Deshaun on Sunday. I'm looking very much forward to the game. Kenyon Green, sideline, he's got an illness. This has been a rough rookie year for Kenyon Green. This has really been kind of a rough year for the rookie class as a whole, if you really look at it. Not great. Now that more time has gone, Derek Stingley, I think he's looked okay. I don't like him in this system. I don't like, Lovie Smith coaching him. He was rusty. You talk about rust. Derek Stingley was basically away from football for a little bit. He was fine, but we've had the hamstring issue, which I think has as much to do with caution as anything. But Stingley, especially when you connect him to Sauce Gardner, there's always going to be that, early doubt, because people wonder, what if they would have taken Sauce? I think we'd be having the same discussion. I think Derek Stingley would be thriving in New York, and I think Sauce Gardner would be in a weird spot in Lovie's system. It's not unique that a player that goes right after another player and has a rookie year, you get these like extreme overreactions of, oh my God, they made a mistake. I think it's pretty early to do that. I'll use the RG3 Andrew Luck example. RG3 was rookie of the year. I mean, it was a never-ending topic. RG3 Andrew Luck, and a lot of the time RG3 was looked at as the better player than Andrew Luck, and we know how it ended up. And why was that? Well, RG3 was in the Shanahan system. RG3 was in a better position, and Andrew Luck wasn't being used as well the rookie year. Matter of fact, he was basically just having to do everything. So I would kind of tone it down a little bit when it comes to the just making Sauce Gardner all of a sudden like better than Derek Stingley. I would tone that down. Kenyon Green, though, you look at everything that's gone on with Kenyon Green as we go through the disappointment of the rookie class. You had him out of shape and banged up at the start of camp. You had him not even starting immediately when we thought he was going to be the plug-and-play guy. You've had him struggle heavily this year, like some of the worst struggles that we've seen. And now he's sick and he's not going to be on the field, which isn't necessarily his fault, but it just adds to the disappointment of the rookie year. John Mechie, obviously that's disappointing. There's nothing you really could have done about John Mechie. And Dameon Pierce, 8 yards rushing the last 2 weeks. I like Dameon Pierce. I think Dameon Pierce is part of a 1-2 punch. I don't think Dameon Pierce is a guy that you want to have to carry the whole load. He hasn't done it. He didn't do it in college. Most teams have 2 good backs. I think Dameon Pierce, I compare him to Marion Barber with the Cowboys. They're actually the exact same weight, and there's a 1-inch height difference. He runs mean. He runs nasty. You want him fresh, but you haven't really been able to find someone, or you didn't really even try to find someone to be a 1-2 punch with him. So I think Dameon Pierce he's surpassed expectations, but I think he's kind of coming back to what he is in this situation, and what he is in an ideal situation. I think he's a really good back. I don't think he's like one of the 5 best running backs in the NFL, which is what he was performing like early on. So I think he's kind of coming down to earth, which is fine. It's you still make that pick every time. And if they had a redraft, Dameon Pierce probably goes in the 2nd or 3rd round, which is fine. I think he's been good. But the rookie class as a whole, Jalen Petrie, there have been some flashes, but there have been some real low points. I think you can chalk a lot of that up to the system. I think if you bring in a new coach, new system, I think Derek Stingley and Jalen Petrie, because of what they've been through this year, and how a coach is going to use them better, I think that they are going to. I think they're going to naturally improve no matter what. I got a text from a former player that I thought really kind of summarized the Lovie Smith coaching perfectly. I actually really do love it. Y'all know how Lovie Smith always says, it's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. We got to tackle. And I'll get to the comments, I promise. But I was on the air with Brandon Scott today. J-Lo's out fishing. And the former player sent me the text, and it reads, as simple as that equals the players aren't good at their jobs. We're getting our ass kicked. I can't coach a team and win if I don't have really good players. Quote, it's as simple as that. I think that's well said, but this is where it goes next level. This is where I really thought this was deep. And I would credit him. I don't want to misquote him if he didn't want to get his stuff out there. But he says, as far as coaches pertaining to talent allotted to them, he says Bill O'Brien equals more with less and less with more. So if Bill O'Brien had little talent, at times he would coach them above their talent. But if he had more talent, then they would underachieve based on what they were on paper. I equate that to kind of Bob Knight. Back in his heyday as a coach. I think he could coach a team of white stiffs to the Sweet 16, but if you give him the McDonald's All-American team, they might not even make the tournament because he'll go nuts. So Bill O'Brien, more with less and less with more. Lovie Smith, more with more, so he's very player dependent, and less with less. So basically, Lovie Smith is player dependent, and he's not going to change the way he coaches. He's not going to adjust. If you give him a really good man-to-man corner and a really good box safety like Jalen Petrie, he's not going to coach that guy up. So I think that's really well said. Bill O'Brien, more with less and less with more. Lovie Smith, more with more and less with less. Gary Kubiak, more with more and more with less. So Gary Kubiak, no matter what you give him, he's going to coach it up. I think that's very well said. David Coley equals cashed a check. I thought this was just an excellent text. I'm actually going to put this on the show doc tomorrow because I think that this is just one of the best one of the best layouts that I think I've ever seen in my life when it comes to laying out. And I'll text him and see if I can credit him for it. But I just thought that was really, 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 really well said. And it's always real when I talk to that guy. You can read between the lines there, figure out who that might have been. But that's really something we got to look at with Lovie Smith. You know, is Lovie Smith really the guy that you want to coach this team next season? I think the answer is absolutely not at this point. And I think that kind of lays it out about as perfectly as I've heard it. Speaking of the Texans, I want to give a shout out to the Texans because it's easy to kind of hike our leg on the Texans and say, you know, certain things about, you know, what they do wrong. But they did something really cool for us today. We had Chris Moore on, the wide receiver for the Houston Texans. And this week is My Cause, My Cleats. And the Texans are the players, they on their cleats, they put, you know, what cause they are they're playing for. And Chris Moore is doing leukemia because of John Mechie. And he's actually, we have a listener by the name of Lincoln Finley. He's a kid who was actually diagnosed with leukemia the same week as John Mechie, and his dad happens to be a listener, also happens to be a listener to the to Lopez's podcast, the Bite Me podcast. And Chris Moore is actually going to wear his cleats and he's going to send them to Lincoln, who, by the way, is having a really tough time right now. It's been a bad week. He's been in bed all week, but he's really taken a liking to John Mechie because the same week that he got diagnosed with leukemia, John Mechie did. So the listener reached out to us, reached out to Lopez, and Chris Moore is going to send him his cleats. So I thought that was a really cool thing by the Texans. And they also, for the media, they asked for a cause, and they actually gave us some custom kicks. So I went with a little MD Anderson action. Got these Nike Air Force Ones. And we got the MD Anderson F Cancer Center right there. So I thought that was a pretty cool thing that the Texans did. So shout out to them and shout out to the players. I mean, they really are trying, guys. I mean, it's a likable squad. Ownership's trying, PR's trying. Nick Caserio's a little out of touch. He's trying though. And I think football does an excellent job of, you know, allowing these types of things to happen and creating bonds and stuff. I don't think it should be minimized. I think the importance of football and stuff is really, really cool. So shout out to the Texans for that. Let's look at some of the comments. Always appreciate the comments. We've talked about Deshaun Watson. We've talked about the rookie class. We've talked about Lovie and the nonsense that he sometimes provides us with. But let's just go through the comments. Lane Kiffin comment. Lane Kiffin coaching record 131-85, and you scoffed when I brought it up. He is a very innovative offensive mind, and look at what he did at Alabama compared to B.O.B. What? Yeah, I do scoff at Lane Kiffin being coach of the Houston Texans. I do scoff at that, and I don't know if he's. Would you call Lane innovative? I mean, he did good at Alabama. I mean, so did Steve Sarkisian. There have been a lot of guys who've done a good job at Alabama. I'm not questioning Lane as a coach, but yeah, I'm absolutely scoffing at the idea of Lane Kiffin as the Texans coach. I am. I think a lot of people would. 713 Houston Sports. Ruben, next great Texan YouTube. Appreciate it. Means a lot coming from you. Deshaun Watson was respectful today at his press conference. I can respect that. I agree. I thought he handled this very well. Podium critic A for Deshaun Watson. Matthew says, I'll admit the presser was smartly done, scripted or not. You got to respect it. Real's got to recognize real. He handled that well. This year is he's going to be kind of rusty. I'm Corey. He's talking about Deshaun Watson. I agree. Did you see Charles Omenihu being a cheerleader for Watson on Twitter regarding Sunday's game? Why is Omenihu still mad at the team? Omenihu should be pissed off. And I'm a fan of Charles. I like Charles when he was here. I talked to Charles a little bit. We talked some UT football. They screwed him, man. I mean, look at this team. Like, look at what Charles Omenihu's doing right now. I think he has one of the best pass rush win percentages in the NFL. And you're watching this defensive line. You're watching them like struggle to make plays. And a lot of it was Easterby. I actually put out a tweet talking about how bad they effed with him, and Charles Omenihu liked the tweet. They screwed with Charles Omenihu at a petty level. They put him third string on depth charts and stuff like that, and that was all Easterby and whatnot. And the fact that Lovie Smith and his staff couldn't get the most out of Charles Omenihu, I think that's one of their biggest knocks when it comes to player development. Like, there's a lot of things that the Texans are doing, taking it on the chin and stuff like that. And I know Charles sometimes is a little bit of a loudmouth, but you've got to deal with some egos, some emotions, and you've got to be able to reason with players. And Charles Omenihu was a guy who, say what you want about him, he worked his ass off. And all he wanted to do was be good at football. Did he talk a little bit too much sometimes? Sure. But Bill O'Brien couldn't vibe with players like that. Jack Easterby just completely couldn't vibe with players like that. I know he has the same agent as Deshaun Watson. Charles Omenihu should be pissed off. He should 100% be pissed off at the organization because they did him wrong. They could have used a player like that. And, he's always been tight with Deshaun Watson. So I don't really blame Charles for being pissed off. I like Charles, and I'm glad he's doing what he's doing in San Francisco. And I think Jack Easterby was an absolute scumbag for the way that he effed with Charles Omenihu. Corey, I'm confused what happened to Russ. I don't know. Maybe Russell Wilson just cast a check and he's just kind of doing his thing. I don't know. Could Deshaun Watson kind of fall off like that? I don't know. We already talked about the mental, weather, all that type of stuff, and how he's going to handle that. I don't see a happy ending for him in Cleveland. Ha, ha, ha. Haven't heard that. I agree. Don't know what you agree with, but that's right. The cold weather and outdoor stadiums of the AFC North have to play a factor in how he plays moving forward. Absolutely agree. He's been referring to his suspension while I've been away. He treats it more as a vacation than a suspension. Hell no, it's not the same as Vic. Metal Pigeon. Landry, do you think the Texans get blown out Sunday? If he does, do you think Lovie gets fired Monday? My thing is this. I feel like this is going to be a closer game because I don't know that the Browns are like one of those teams that's going to try to blow you out. I think it's going to be like a ground and pound type of game. So, the line is 7. I could see it being a close game. If I were the Texans, I wouldn't fire Lovie. I would fire Lovie the 10 minutes after Nathaniel Hackett got fired in Denver. I would make Lovie the one and done guy right after Nathaniel Hackett. Dead serious. That would be my strategy. And plus, I want to lose. I want to get the number 1 pick. And I think Lovie's the perfect guy for the job. As long as you're resting Stingley and stuff, not making him play too much more in the system, I think that's a good thing. Marcus Johnson, I think once the game starts, the mentality changes for Deshaun, no doubt. And I said this today, and there was a listener who took exception with me saying this, but dude, like, I'm not going to sit here and act like Deshaun Watson sucks at football. But I talked about, I said Deshaun Watson's built different than you or I. So, you or I are not going to have a punctured lung and take a bus to Jacksonville so we can play a game. You or I is not going to get kicked in the face and spin off and throw a touchdown pass. You or I are not going to be able to deal with, all the mental and physical adversity that a professional athlete deals with. That's why Deshaun Watson got $250 million. So there are a lot of hurdles in front of him. But look, as soon as 99.999% of the time when Deshaun Watson goes between those white lines, he's ready to go. He's ready to ball. And he just gets in a zone. He gets in a different zone a lot of the time. So I'm with you. Maybe the mentality does change, but those are hurdles that matter. But I have no problem giving Deshaun Watson the props that he deserves. None of your business. Shows Houston love. Come on, man. Come on, man. Come on, man. Dude was just reading off a script. He's got no regrets. Hasn't done anything to apologize. You're giving him too much credit. Okay. I thought he showed Houston some love, but you don't have to think that. I wonder if he gets a little extra from other teams' rushers. Don't know what that means. Corey says, I think image is huge to him, and he did take a step today. Yeah, I mean, the image is never going to be completely saved, but today was a good thing. Rest Pierce so we can draft Young and Robinson. I'm all about Bijan Robinson. Look, even if it takes that second-round pick, trading up into the first, I think running back – especially a good running back like that. If you get 3 prime years of a running back, it can make the biggest impact on your team. Look what Breece Hall was doing for the Jets before he went down. And the other thing about running backs that I absolutely hate is whenever it doesn't work out, all the people that like don't realize that running back, like really the second round is like the prime for the running back. All the people that like minimize the running back position, they say, well, see, you can't take them. They get hurt. Players at all positions in the NFL get hurt. Like you see offensive linemen, miss the season. You see safeties, you see linebackers. But when a linebacker gets hurt, you don't say, well, see, there's a linebacker. He got hurt. That's why you don't draft him. Like when the Chiefs drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire, it hasn't looked that good. So people say, see, that's why you don't take a running back there. What if they'd taken Jonathan Taylor instead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire? Like, will we be saying that? But for whatever reason, people just want to be right. It's like the Lamar Jackson thing. Like Lamar Jackson has a bad game and all of a sudden, see, told you he sucks. No, running backs make the biggest impact. They're immediately in their prime. So if you can get a Bijan Robinson or something like that mid to late first, have at it. Maybe nobody's talking about, but I say we get a new head coach next year. We need a new defensive coordinator as well as Lovie called the defense. Who does this team pick for DC? I don't know. I'd have to know who the HC is first. O'Brien or Cornell? No idea. We definitely need that QB from Roll Tide. That would be Bryce Young. I will agree to disagree. Don't say that. I hate that. That must be a listener of the show knowing that I hate that line, agree to disagree. Hate that. Could Bryce be even better than his tape shows? He's playing in a BOB offense, so the dude could be even better than we know. I agree 100%. I think this is making him stronger. Bryce Young, 100,000% agree with that. Big time. 100% agree with that. Ole Miss was a dumpster fire until Kiffin got there. Just saying, what's that got to do with the NFL? I mean, Baylor was kind of in a dumpster fire situation when Matt Rule got there. Okay. What's that mean? What was LSU before Saban got there, before he went to the Miami Dolphins? Who cares? Doesn't mean anything. Corey, I want D'Amico. Not sure if he'll come. Yeah, that seems to be the popular opinion. I put out a hypothetical about Texans coaches, like former Texans assistants. Who would you most have? D'Amico Ryans beat out Mike McDaniel, Kyle Shanahan, and Robert Saleh. I want D'Amico, but damn, maybe you are just thinking about like realistic, but that's not what a hypothetical is. Can't wait to see Bryce in a Texans uniform. That's a dream. I think it'll be fun. Oren says D4 is still an elite player. He's going to embarrass this team even with 2 years off. We'll see. We'll see. He might. Cal will for sure fire people after D4 embarrasses him. That's interesting because I do wonder what the reaction would be if Deshaun Watson just comes here and embarrasses ownership, because ownership, they probably didn't like the way stuff went down. I think that's only natural. But I don't know that they're just going to fire someone on a Monday. Again, I would wait till Hackett got fired. Appreciate everyone for coming through. Appreciate everyone for keeping the channel going. Keep subscribing. I'm trying to get to 1,000 before the end of the year. I think we're like 100 and something off. I said when I started this at the start of the season, my first goal is to just put out as much content as possible, interact with the streets, get out there on these Texan streets. Shout out to all the streamers out there that do their thing. We need to get this community straight, because when it starts popping, it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm enjoying that. And then we'll take it to the next level after the season, heading into the draft, and it'll only get better. But the key is consistency. A lot of people try to start, YouTube channels, and they're doing it every other day and stuff. And you can tell they're just doing it to, like, I don't know, just because. this is what I would be doing if I were 9 to 5 in it and doing something that wasn't outside of sports. These are the types of conversations I'd like to have. And that's why I got a lot of respect for all you, because despite the fact the Texans have been bad, you're still passionate about the team. You're still rooting for the team. You're still angry, even when it's venomous. Nothing but love for the passion and stuff, because the one thing that's worse than passion is apathy. And we're just going to ride and die, keep doing this thing, and keep enjoying it, and keep listening to In the Loop 10 to 2 Monday through Friday on Sports Radio 610. Fire up the Odyssey app. Tomorrow we're going to have the Slime Off at 1:20. We're going to have a little Football Friday, getting you ready for Sunday. And Sunday we'll be out there, be at the tailgate. Shout out to the Nuff Said tailgate. Be at the press box. So if you're ever at the game, hit me up at Landry Locker. I'll keep showing you love, and we'll do a ticket exchange. Again, people who aren't using their tickets, they've given me their tickets, and I've been getting them to people who wouldn't normally get to go to the game. Not as easy during the Browns game. I'm not going to lie. It seems like a lot of people want to go to this one. So it's like Goodwill. Like, you're not giving away the new Jays. Like, I'm not giving these to Goodwill, you know? That's what I'm saying. So the whole point is, when people aren't going to use their tickets, but I think a lot more people are using their tickets this week. But we'll get back to that. I'm sure we'll be able to get some tickets out there. So I appreciate y'all for the love. Appreciate y'all for listening to the show. I appreciate y'all for bringing that passion. And, no matter how bad things get, no matter how much the Texans stink, no matter how frustrated you get, we're all in this together. Have a good night, people, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.